You're listening to the Modern People Leader podcast, where we go behind the scenes with today's top HR leaders and work experts. We talk to them about how they've gotten to where they're at, what they do every day, and what they see coming next for the future of work. Hope you enjoy.
So this has been a long time coming, Colin. I'm glad we're here today, Thanksgiving week, ready to talk about some awesomeness.
Well, first, remind me how you two met.
That's a great story. So Colin and I met at an event hosted by a Modern People Leader partner, one of the partners, clients that we work with, named Kunik. And Kunik is an amazing service that essentially is bespoke leadership development. And their superpower is a expert network that's unparalleled. And they can leverage that network to help you develop custom development programs for your leaders. And so Colin is a current / possibly former. I'll let Colin, you have a lot of updates to share with us today, but Colin and I met through Kunik and the work that they do. We were at an event in Boston together, and I've actually talked about this, Daniel. I've shared this multiple times with you. Maybe I've shared it on the show, but it was the first time that I saw like the MPL effect in real life. And so I was introduced, the Kunik team introduced me at this event in Boston. There were probably 50, 60 chief people officers there. And it just was like an ovation that I just was not prepared for. I'm pretty sure I blushed. Colin, I don't know if you remember, but
I do.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking about it, but I geeked out a little. Yeah.
And so we met there, and it's just been we've stayed in contact, and we've spoken multiple times. And so we had talked about bringing you on the show, Colin, a few months ago, and then life happened, but here we are. So we're excited to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm amazing. It's really good to be here, and I'm glad we're able to do this. And I think the part of the story that Stephen isn't telling is that we had sort of a dinner before the event, and I had no idea that he was going to be there, and he had no idea that I knew who he was. But I'm an avid listener to this broadcast. I have since the great Jennifer Paxton was on a couple of years ago, and I've been following ever since. Encourage people to listen.
That's one of the
to
OGs. That was
episode.
a long time ago.
Yeah, she's the truth, And so this is a common place for me to think about culture and people and my own leadership. And so to go from being a guest to a Kunik dinner guest to a guest on the broadcast is really cool. So I'm really happy and grateful for the opportunity to share.
Well, Colin, you know the drill then. You know that we start every episode with good news stories. So we like for our guests to kick it off. So we're going to hand it right over to you.
Yeah. So I think the good news, which is actually the underpinning of why we had to reschedule, is that I started a new job. And when we were last together, I was consulting. I had left Human Rights Watch a couple of years ago and wanted to go out on my own and do some more DEI projects and work on some things that I don't often get to work on, and work with some organizations that I'm a big fan of but don't often get to work with. And then I think, like many consultants, I woke up one day and I realized that I actually need to be fixing things. And while it's great to have an audience and it's great that people want your advice, I am a fixer. And so I got bit by the bug to go back in-house. And a couple of weeks ago, I joined Centering Healthcare Institute, which is a small but mighty national nonprofit that's focused on patient care, and specifically making sure that vulnerable communities have access to early medical care, which we know impacts positively the health outcomes of children. And it's based on a centering model that has proven to be both financially and from a health standpoint beneficial to patients, their families, and providers. And so I'm their chief people culture officer, their first one. And I've inherited a really dynamic team who I think look at people and culture through a similar lens. And it's been probably, I've had a few new jobs a few times before, but it's been the most exhilarating and values validating sort of onboarding in first couple of weeks I think I've ever experienced.
Well, first off, congrats on the new job. And I feel like it's a perfect time of the year for a transition. We're coming up on the end of the year, about to go into holiday season. So congrats to you. You want to go next, Steven?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. It's Thanksgiving. It's going to be Thanksgiving on Thursday. Today's Tuesday. I have some family coming into town. So my in-laws will be driving in from Laredo. My older brother, along with his wife and 2 kids, will be driving in from Dallas. And it's going to be like a big joint Salito Huerta Thanksgiving celebration at my parents' house. Steven will be there with his fiance, Sarah.
This sounds really enticing. I'm thinking about getting in the car.
Oh yeah,
please come.
You're invited.
Oh my god, Belinda, so Daniel's mom, she's our day one. She literally, like, if she's liked every Instagram post, which is new by the way, but every now and then I go in and I'll see a Modern People Leader post with 1 like, and it's Belinda.
And Belinda, fantastic.
And so she would go crazy if an actual guest joined us, but
she would love it.
That is great news. That is great news. And I'm super excited to be with family on Thanksgiving. I don't have my daughters. I know that's a bad news story. That's not good news. But in lieu of that, I have found over the years, I've learned how I need to spend my time when I'm not with them. And so being part of a big family and having an extended family through Daniel and his brothers feel like brothers to me. So it's awesome to just be included. In addition to that, and you may notice, and for the people that watch our clips, and I'm surprised, Daniel, you haven't called this out yet, but this is my actual bedroom. This is real life background. Over my left shoulder, there used to be a rocking chair that's like our reading nook over there. At 4 p.m. today, so in 2 hours, it's going to become our music corner. And my fiance picked up drums and has decided to rent actual drum set. So in 2 hours, that space over there is going to have a drum set. So that's my other good news. And I don't think you know me at this level, Colin, but one of the fun facts for me in my life is I played drums for almost 20 years. And so I can lay down a beat. And so it's going to be nice to get back into it.
So was this just your sneaky way of getting
who are
Sarah's
the drums
permission?
really for?
Yeah.
Dude, I swear to you, I have been manifested in kind of contrived ways before, but this was not one of them. So it's a long story short, but my fiance read a book called The Artist's Way, and she was just looking for, this is like 2023, she reads The Artist's Way, and it's like a way to connect with her creative self. And one of the things that she took away was just having like an artistic practice, and having like a practicing art, practicing music. And so the music that she chose was percussion and drums. And I was like, oh my God, universe, thank you for bringing me a partner that is just so amazing. And in addition to all the wonderful things about Sarah, now she's picked up the drums, which is literally one of the loves of my life. And I haven't actively played in, I don't know, 8 years, 9 years, long time. So.
And you can teach her. You can give her some tips.
We've already practiced together. This is like we've had like a drum practice date. So there you go.
I feel, Daniel and Steven, I feel a new lead-in song being produced right now.
Oh yeah. I got you. I got you.
Steven?
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
I mean, why not?
That's funny. All right.
Wonderful.
So Colin, I feel like we could just like keep talking about Steven and his hobby as
as
a drummer, the gift.
Dude, I'll record a video. I'll record a video later this evening. Mark my words. I will record a video. I'll even let you guys choose the song, and I'll send you a quick video of me trying to lay a beat on that song.
I accept.
All right. Cool.
Accept. Yep.
I've even seen, apparently Steven was like an actual like artist too. Like he could paint back in the day.
I can see it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just thinking it's totally distracting.
Yeah. Please don't.
Yeah. I'm not going to do it. Colin, what's the full story? So you briefly mentioned the recent transition and going back in-house, but give us the full story.
Yeah. So the full story, I think, is I have always been really sure about my career choice. I think I'm one of the lucky ones, really blessed to have sort of had clarity that nurturing people and building inclusive and safe workplaces is not work for me. I think it's a calling. And I think over the years, I learned to do it so well that it became the thing that I focus on instead of the other things that I needed to focus on, like my mind and an adequate rest and how you balance time at work with time with family and friends. And so then 2020 comes. I've just started a new job at Human Rights Watch as their chief people officer. And that was a really hard year. And then I suffered some loss. And then life started lifing. And then I burned out. And so everything about this moment, particularly in the spirit of Thanksgiving, is really a result of me needing to take time away, which I did after I left Human Rights Watch, to work on the other aspects of the portfolio of Colin Mincy that people don't talk about, which is overeating and not getting enough rest and not investing enough time in relationships and not working on the things about myself I didn't like. So I've been talking around this theme around hope is not a strategy, because I think we have to be intentional about being balanced. And I don't think we can do great work if we're not being really honest with ourselves about what we need to change in order to be happy in life and work. So my story is that I burned out, and I'm one of the lucky ones that made it back, stronger than I think I've ever been, but really determined to talk about how hard it was and what an impossible journey it was, but that it's really never too late to start working on yourself so that you can actually be a stronger support and service to others.
So I love your story, Colin. I've shared this with you multiple times, and we're glazing over. We have some really important things we want to talk about. So there are a lot of parts of your story that we're glazing over. And I encourage our listeners, like, reach out to Colin. Like, the thing is, we've been connected, right, since late spring, early summer. And one of the things that amazes me about you and your network and the community you've built is just how extensive it is. Like, I'll see like a random comment on someone who we have no clear tie to. And I think the way you interact with the HR community, the way you approach sharing your story is a big reason for that. I think people gravitate to you because you just have so much to share, and it's not all happy elements. And there's high highs, right? And there are lows, just like I feel like that I've had. And so it's a relatable story. And again, if you want to get to really know Colin, you should reach out to him, because at least in our relationship, you've been a really open book. What I want to focus on, because it really relates to the story, the details we're going to get into, at what point did you realize, you know what, I'm ready? I think I'm ready to find the next chapter in my career. And I think that might be going back in-house, like back into a practitioner role. Like, at what point did that happen? Because I feel like there are a lot of people leaders, or at least people in our community that we talk to, they're on the fence. Yeah. And so I'm just curious, like, what What was that moment for you where you're like, God, you touched on it in Good News Stories, like, wow, I have work I need to do, and the time is now.
So the answer is, and I don't answer this question to make anyone feel badly, but and I'll explain why, but I was in a meeting and I had just come back to work after suffering a pretty major loss. And I was presenting something, and someone during the course of their feedback asked me what I'd been doing with all of my time. And the answer was not spending enough time with the person I just lost. And by the way, that question wasn't intended to be hurtful or harmful. And I feel no anger or bitterness towards the person. I actually feel gratitude, because that moment opened my eyes and said, you've shown grace and patience and kindness, and you open up your heart and your home and your phone lines on weekends and nights. You go to wakes and funerals of colleagues who've lost folks. And despite all of those things, there's still this transactional relationship between HR and the organization. And the moment the what's in it for me isn't in it, all of that stuff seems to not matter, right? And so that's how you feel in the moment. It's not the right way to react, but that's sort of how you feel in the moment. And that led me to think about, well, what have I been doing with my time? And really looking around and realizing, at that point, I was like 320 pounds and I was severely overworked, and I was probably drinking too much, and I probably, like, just all of the things. And I realized that I was at a place of unhappiness, and I had developed this skill in my career of helping people realize when it, that there are times to hold and times to fold, and knowing when to step away before you're dragged out on a stretcher or you've completely lost your mind is actually a really good thing for you and for the organization. So for me, it was the moment of, you've done all of this and still there's more, but I actually didn't have any more to give. And I also needed to spend some time living some of the lessons that I tried to teach other people in my service to them as their HR leader, which was that you can't take care of other people unless you take care of yourself.
Yeah. And I feel like I've had similar moments in my life, like when one of my best friends passed away in 2019, and he was also a coworker. He worked for Steven as well. And it's times like that where it forces you to really like reevaluate all of your decisions that you've been making, how you're living your life, whether or not like you're actually on track to achieve like your life's goal or life's mission, if you're healthy, if you're spending your time the way that you should be. And that has sent me down a 5-year journey of doing and trying a lot of things, whether it's meditation, going to yoga, getting like a really good like workout routine, starting the podcast, starting my own business, making sure that like I'm spending every minute of my day doing the things I need to keep all of the buckets full. And for me, it's been in the last couple of years, I've taken a more like data driven approach, which doesn't work for everybody. So at one point I was like tracking like everything that I ate, how much I worked out, how much I was sleeping, how much water I was drinking, how much time I was spending on work, and what in particular I was focusing my time on for modern people leader stuff. And that worked for me for like a year. And then I was like, I don't need this anymore. Like there's some of it I still like, but I tweaked it. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is there are so many different ways to like get your life back on track. And I'm curious like how you approach that. Was it like a data driven approach? Was it just like these are the 2 or 3 things I need to focus on, and as long as I'm doing something each day that contributes to improving these elements of my life, then I'm good? Like, how did you think about that?
So first of all, I'm sorry for your loss. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I really identify with it. I am a charmer, and it is the best and worst thing about me. And the reason I say that is because data actually is not my thing. I'm a feelings person. We use words and gestures and other things to sort of convince folks that we've done something. But the problem is that you can manipulate anything to sound like it actually got done. But it's data and accountability that got me to be able to have this conversation with you today. Right. So it's not the discipline of measuring everything, but it's about the fact that hope actually is great, and it allows us to create sort of a vision and aspiration of where we want to get to. But I think it's those benchmarks and those objectives. And for me, it was having an accountability partner who I couldn't charm to hold me accountable to the process, right? And once I got to the process, I started seeing the results. And once I saw the results, I wanted to go further. And once I wanted to go further, then I went back to my immediate home base, which is, well, how do I help other people? So for me, it started with, what are the things I don't like about myself? My weight. And I talk about this quite often later in life than I more so than I have my other life. I'm also a victim of childhood sex abuse, right? And these are things that I know about me. They're like part of my history. I was a perfectly healthy teenager, and then just later in life, these things that are just unresolved and that have lingered just manifest themselves in ways that are really overwhelming and really daunting and really substantial. And so for me, it was, I'm going to make a list of the things that I know are barriers to my personal fulfillment. And I'm now at a place, this is 43, where I can't outwork and I can't outcharm and I can't out wordsmith these problems. I have to deal with them. And so I did. And that's the meaning behind being really intentional about change, is that hope is great, but it's the result, it's the execution and the commitment to the process and wanting more for yourself. I think that has sort of carried me through the unknown territory of being disciplined, which I now love. I love discipline. I used to be a disruptor, and now I'm really trying to balance how to be disciplined and still be a little bit of a disruptor.
I really relate to your story just in terms of, because I'm very different to Daniel. And when Daniel says he was detailed in tracking, like we were just scratching the surface. But in my belief, and I remember like we talked about it and I was like, man, if it's working for you, then it's working for you. Like it doesn't matter what I think or what anyone thinks.
Right.
The best solution is the solution you need for your life right now. And I believe that in my heart of hearts for all the people out there. And for me, what that looked like was very different. It was more similar to your approach, Colin. Like I think for me, it's like tech debt, right? When you're building software and you cut the corner on this infrastructure decision and there's a right way to write the code, but it's going to take twice as long. So you take this other way, and they're like, the code just gets convoluted and complicated, and I'm non-technical, so I'm probably doing a poor job of explaining this, but at a certain point it catches up. And you either choose to fix it and choose to start a new chapter for your product, or you don't, and you're probably going to die a slow death, software speaking, product wise. And I feel like it's kind of, for me, it was kind of like that in my life. Like I got to a certain point and it was like, okay, there are these things. And I have a hypothesis that not all, but a lot of people have these things that they know they need to look at, but they're really tough to look at. And a lot of people just, take that stuff to their grave. And, I have no opinion in the matter other than for me, it was clear that was not going to be a good ending. Like that path to my grave was going to be tragic, and it was not what I wanted. And it's not what I wanted for me or for the people in my life, those close to me. And so when I kind of snapped out of it, I call it like waking up. I was like, oh shit, okay, I need to quit drinking. Because there are clear consequences for me that this is creating. And but that, that was just the beginning. There was another, later on, it was like my relationship to work, and then my relationship with my family, and then how do I set boundaries so I can have the types of relationships that I want to have. And so I really relate to kind of how you have worked through things. I'm curious, as you saw progress, was it easy for you to kind of keep moving forward, or did you have like people in your network that kind of helped you as if you got stuck in the rut? Like, what did that process look like for you to kind of get yourself moving forward?
Great question. So I've like quit smoking and started smoking and quit smoking again. So I've got a PhD in starting and stopping and starting and stopping. But because this was such a like personal space of revelation for me, once I started, I haven't looked back. And by the way, just to be solutions focused, when I made the list of all of the things that I wanted to work on, I didn't start working on all of them at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big believer, like I grew up watching Bob Ross, and the painting at the end of the hour looks very different than the canvas when it started, right? And so I just put a little bit of paint on the canvas at a time until I really understood what the picture is supposed to look like. Because this, to be honest, it's probably the first time in my life where I feel like I have an equal level of clarity, both personally and professionally, right? Think about that. I'm 43. And so for me, it was just doing a little bit at a time, Stephen, so that I didn't have to like backslide and start over again. I used to work for someone who tells the story of a cement truck going uphill. And, cement trucks are not built for hills, but they can get over the hill. But if you don't have enough momentum, then the cement truck slides back down to the beginning. And every time you start a second time and a third time, you never get as far as you do the first. So for me, it was really about like, how do I do this in phases and steps? Knowing, one, I'm a charmer, and knowing that I have accountability so that I'm moving forward each step and I don't have to be the cement truck going uphill.
And so now you've got quick wins. You're building your momentum. You're being rigorously honest with yourself and with others. At what point?
I've lost 68 pounds.
Wow.
And I get regular rest, and I try to walk 15,000 steps a day. And I think I'm a little nicer. I think I laugh a little bit more. I have a lot more energy. And catch this, even when I have been suffering and even when I'm have been in peril, my work's always been pretty good. But today my work is better than it's ever been, right? And so for me, recognizing that like the strategy to getting better was not hope, but a plan, like it's really changed my life.
Yeah, when you say you were always good at the work, but it's gotten even better, what does that look like for you? Like, how does that show up on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, that's such a great question. I had a boss who told me that if I was a conductor, people who saw me practice would never show up for the concert. The concert's always fine. Everyone plays their part. The music sounds great, but the process leading up to it is a disaster. And for years, like that's how I've worked. It's like I just, throw a bunch of balls up in the air, catch what I can, and whatever I don't catch, it just falls on the ground and I pick it up another day. And for you, Daniel, that you'd probably pass out having to work a process like that. but that's how I existed. Like, and that's also like how I live my personal life. And once I started becoming more disciplined and more process oriented, I realized how much extra work I create for myself and other people by not being more disciplined in my process. And that focusing on my process is actually the thing that helps me stay focused on what that goal is. So I've just been more disciplined about creating processes to manage myself, to manage my time, and the outcomes of my work means that I can just do more faster. So as a consultant for the first time with not great time management or organization skills, that meant I could manage the deliverable of 4 or 5 clients at a time, where Colin 1.0 would have had 4 very disappointed people. From a wellness standpoint, it's about I actually do specific things before I go to bed so that I get a good night's rest and I shut my brain down so that I can get a healthy night's sleep. I exercise at certain points of the day so that I am using my mind and my physical body in the most meaningful ways. So I'm just more thoughtful. Other than I've got to get this done, I'm really thinking about how I'm doing it.
And you mentioned the word process a couple of times.
Yeah, and my old colleagues who probably listen to this broadcast, they're probably looking around wondering if I've got like a ghost interviewer. It's not something I talk about often.
Yeah. Would you say that being a few weeks into your new role, you have done a lot of reflection on your process as a CHRO or as a people leader, or just like how you operate as a leader? And if so, like, what's this Colin 2.0, 3.0 CHRO look like? And how is that different than before?
I'm super curious to hear the response to this, because I remember as I worked through my journey, I remember everything was kind of the same, but everything also was very different. Like, I remember looking at the leaves on a tree and being like, God, these leaves are just hitting different. Like, they're so beautiful. And so I'm just curious, like, what this is going to be, what the reflections have been as you kind of work through your first in-house job back.
Yeah. Okay. So this is such an important question. So first of all, the transformation for me happened months ago, right before I even accepted this offer. And to be honest with you, I actually think without the transformation, I probably wouldn't have gotten the job. So I'm now taking what I've started as a consultant, and I am now in a new space, which, by the way, is an in-house space, which is where I last burned out. So I'm really thoughtful about where I failed. And by the way, I think it's okay to talk about failure because from that I have learned the biggest lessons. So as I approach this new role, there are 4 or 5 things I'm thinking about. First of all, I'm thinking about the fact that I have a team and that they need the best of me, not the rest of me. And at Human Rights Watch, I think my team got the rest of me. They definitely didn't get the best of me. And so I'm being really intentional about how I'm creating relationships and being available and being a thought partner and having space and time to create and problem solve and plan and strategize and go beyond the work to make sure that my team is good and that I'm doing well for them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I had a coach, her name's Jen Logue, who taught me this practice. Do it, defer it, delegate it, delete it. Do it, defer it, delegate it, delete it. I do this every Sunday because the one thing that is not going to happen to me is I'm not getting the Sunday scaries again. I've lived like half my life with the Sunday scaries, with the stomach aches at 7 p.m. and taking Tums before bed and in the morning because I've got anxiety about the upcoming work week. And so I do this, do it, defer it, delegate it, delete it on Sunday afternoon. And then I put my notebook away and I go on about my day, and I'm already okay with the week started because I have a clear line of what I need to do and the things that I can pass on and the things that go to other places. And in the best part, the things that I can cross off the list. We're heavily investing in strategy. Organizational strategy is great. I'm talking about people and culture strategy. Like, what are the specific things around talent, around engagement, around DEI that we need to do to complement the organization's objectives, but also what are the things we need to do to create work environments where people can thrive and meet that moment. And we're building the strategy with the actual practitioners on the people and culture team. We're not It's not being handed to us by an executive committee or a board committee or an outside consultant who develop these things in a vacuum and want to shove them down our throats and wonder why we don't get excited about them. And then the last thing I'm doing is I am creating lots of spaces for staff feedback, because in the absence of engagement and facts, people make things up. And that is a hard thing for HR folks to do, is to fight a narrative that isn't even true. And then the second piece around that is we want to develop evangelists who believe in what we are doing and think that the work that we're doing will be responsive and helpful to them. And so having continuous feedback loops is a good way for me to keep my ears to the ground and understand what staff are thinking, and to share how I'm taking what I'm hearing and using that to inform decisions that we're making. So beating the Sunday scaries through prioritization, making sure that the team gets the best of me, not the rest of me, really investing in strategy, but from the practitioner lens, and being an accountable and credible and safe space for people to share their ideas and their feedback.
I love all of that. And honestly, Colin, you had me at the very beginning when you mentioned it being okay to fail. And I think it was Katie Burke at our NPL Live Austin event. And one of her comments is like, we need a normalized failure as HR leaders. And she was really speaking in the context of AI and not feeling like we have to have a perfected AI strategy that is foolproof, that will definitely work, because that doesn't exist. Like, we're all like trying to figure that out. But I think there's something to say about normalizing failure just in a broader sense as a people team.
Yeah.
And knowing that times are tough right now. The world is tough. We have a growing list of things that we need to do, but a finite number of resources. That's probably not going to change this year. Curious to get your thoughts. Like, we're hearing 2025 is probably going to be a continuation of where we've been in 2024, at least for the first quarter or two. And so when you think about that, would you agree with the statement that there's a gap between what's expected of HR and the resources that we are enabled to solve the problems that we have to solve? Like, it feels like there's a disconnect there. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And I think it's evidenced by how many HR people are leaving the profession. I think it's evidenced by how many HR people are going on medical leave, like around the fourth quarter, because they can't actually make it to the end of the calendar year. I think it's a real problem. And I think that we are talking about the fact that it's a problem, but we're not talking about the fact, I'm going to get myself in a little bit of trouble here. Don't send me any nasty notes either. What we're not talking about is that we actually know the answer to the problem.
Tell me more.
If I took a sample of people cross-functionally from an organization and I gave them post-its and I said, name the top problematic people who derail safety and progress in the organization, I'm actually going to get the same names. If I ask people what some of the impediments are to engagement, I'm going to get the same answers. People are going to talk about pay equity, and they're going to talk about a lack of clarity around decision making, and they're going to talk about the fact that they're being asked to do more with less, and that promotions are dependent on which manager they work for, what side of the house. Like, these are not new things. So the thing that really keeps me up at night is we have these problems. They are lingering, well dialogued, clear problems. You can look at Jessica Winder or Alex Saylor or Tracy Spangenberg or Heba or whoever, and thank God for them, by the way, and their bold and Julie Turney and their courageous approach to having conversations on how we rescue HR from where it's been. But we know what the problems are. We're just not dealing with them. And HR, depending on where it's positioned, are actually trying to heal the organization at the same time as sometimes leaders and other people in power are continuing to harm it, right? So we're fixing one thing and then waiting for the next shoe to drop. And so, yeah, we're not okay.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, then also to your point earlier about, this all or nothing mentality that we're in, right? Which is, if we agree on 90% of the thing, but 10% of the thing doesn't feel right, so nothing happens. Like, I reject that. I think we need to start openly, just like we're holding people accountable for, microaggressions and DEI infractions. We really need to hold people accountable who are not solutions focused, who just want to pick and navel gaze and pick apart so that the thing doesn't move forward. And I just think there's a lot we can do in support of HR if we just name the things so that we can start claiming the things. But we can't claim the things because we won't name them. But we know what they are.
Name the things so you can claim the things. I love that. As you were describing how a lot of these problems have been lingering forever, like we know the problems, it reminds me of something a buddy of mine once said. He said that organizations, for the most part, are pathological. Like, it's like they do things to harm the rest of the organization, but it still works. And I think that's the problem. Like, I'm sure some of the biggest companies, I mean, a lot of the biggest companies in the world operate this way. But because it works, there's like this resistance to change. It's not to say it couldn't work better, and it would work better, but that was my first thought. We don't have much time. I think the last question I really have for you is, let's say there's an HR leader at home or in the car, and after hearing this conversation, they're like, you know what? I think I need to make some changes in my life. Like, what practical first steps would you recommend for them? Like, when you were in that moment where you realized like something's got to change, like what were some of the first steps that you took?
That's a really good question. By the way, I still think this is the greatest profession in the world. And I'm critical because I love it and I want more than what it gets. For me, the first step was, am I still effective? And I feel like when we ask that question, we automatically go to self introspection, but it actually doesn't have to be that. If you're in a position where people are expecting you to execute, but you can't because values aren't aligned, because you're not positioned in the right way, because you don't have influence, think about the cost of staying to you, your confidence, your self-worth, your ability to grow, your ability to maintain relationships when all of this expectation is on you, but you can't do anything with it. And eventually, I learned the hard way, like, people know my heart and my values, but eventually if I can't deliver for them, it actually doesn't matter. People aren't looking, they're looking for to be encouraged. They're looking for execution. So if you're not in a position where you can do that, I think that's a conversation, starter right there. And second, people know the difference between butter and margarine. And so, and I'm just going to say it because I've worked with some HR people who are like this. There are some HR people who are perfectly fine trying to make people think that the margarine is butter. And they're really good at it, and they'll toe the line, and they'll create a policy in 30 seconds and throw every problem at it. And there are organizations and environments that are perfect for them. And shout out to those HR folks, and I wish you well. But for the rest of us who actually recognize that we spend a third of our life at work, if the HRing that you want to do, you can't do, then you need to think about whether you're spending that third of your life in the right place. Third is, I think we need to be in relationship with people who have been through these types of things. So find an external HR thought partner who can mentor you and give you advice, and also sometimes remind you that it's not all or nothing, right? That's a great song from O-Town. Shout out to O-Town. But that's just not the way that life works. We don't get everything. And so the job can't be everything. But you have to be able to be effective. You have to be able to be the kind of HR person you want to be, whichever one it is. Hopefully more of the latter than the former. And you have to be able, I think, to recognize how much time a third of your life is. And if you're spending it at a place that's not serving you, that's your fault. That's not the organization's fault. But so I think those are the three things that we have to consider. I'm not suggesting that everyone leave their jobs because it's difficult, but I'm suggesting that you really assess whether what good looks like is something that you can deliver, and whether what good looks like for you is what good looks like for the people who are in leadership. And if those things are not in sync, you can bring back Prince and Michael Jackson and Mother Teresa, and the miracle is still not going to come, because hope is not a strategy. Like, you have to have a plan, and you can't build a plan on fractured and misaligned values.
Yeah.
And no organization should make you feel like you have to.
No, I mean, I think this is a timely conversation. I think that as I mentioned earlier, it does feel like we're in an all or nothing kind of world, a polarized world, that makes it even harder for us to enact the change that we want to enact. But if and I called it like 6 months ago, I forget which conversation Daniel and I were having on the show, and I was like, Daniel, I've been through, I'm old enough, I'm 48. I'm old enough to have seen a few cycles, and this has happened before. HR leaders, people leaders, our industry as a whole has been down, and it has come back up, and it has come back. It surpassed what it was. And I feel like there's a huge opportunity for us right now to bring it back up and to even elevate it further than it was. But it certainly feels tough right now. And so your journey brings me, hope that more people leaders, more experienced people leaders are finding their way back, because, times are challenging, and we need that experience. We need that kind of mentality. We need better, healthier practitioners so that we can really enact the change that the workforce needs. So thank you for sharing your story with us, Colin, and walking us through your journey. takes a lot of vulnerability to come on a podcast like this and share some of the details you shared. It's now that time, though. We got to turn a corner and bring this to a close. Before we do that, there are a couple of segments we still have. Next one is rapid fire questions. It's the same set of questions we ask every guest. We change them every now and then, but essentially the same. Are you ready to do this?
I think so, yeah.
All right, let's go. How do you define a modern people leader? What are the traits and characteristics?
They know the business. They go beyond the work to understand the people, beyond what the people can do for them. They are vulnerable about who they are, how they feel, and when they have made a mistake and what they've learned. And they are accountable and hold others accountable too.
All right, question 2. If you could go back in time and talk to a 22-year-old Colin, what career advice would you give yourself and why?
Don't go out during the week.
That's great advice. Oh, that might be the best response.
I'm telling the truth, right? Like,
yeah.
Tell the truth.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's hilarious. And it's so true.
Nothing good happens. Nothing good comes out of that. Next question. Next question. Is there anything you believe to be true about the world of work, but don't yet have the data to support it?
Oh, I forgot about this question. You know what I'm going to say, actually? And please do write me a letter if you disagree, because I actually think this is a good conversation. I actually think that access to information is a forgotten DEI principle, and how much information makes or breaks how people get promoted, are elevated, and are able to set themselves apart from those who don't have it. And the intersection of power in those dynamics is something that I don't think we're talking enough about.
Access to information. All right, that's another first for us, for both of those responses. All right, last rapid fire. Who should we have on the show next?
Oh, I'm going to say that you should have Dr. Helen Krug von Nida, who is a former colleague of mine at the International Rescue Committee and who has a women-empowered consultancy that's focused on mobilizing women leadership and also strengthening allyship so that the workplace is a safer and more thriving environment for women to work in. She's one of my heroes.
We would be honored to have her, so we'll definitely reach out. And that, Colin, gets us to our final tradition. I can't believe we're here already. That just blew by. One word or phrase close. We all respond with a word or a few words that from the episode, or just as we reflect on the last hour, way we want to wrap things up.
Hope is not a strategy.
I'll go next. I'm going to say do it, defer it, delegate it, delete it.
All right.
I'm going to go with we got this. I came into this conversation low energy. I told you guys before, and you were like, Steven, we got this. Come on. And so thank you for giving me inspiration and giving me energy. This has been the best hour of my week. And so thank you so much, Colin. It was worth the wait. It's been a privilege having you.
Thank you for this platform. I appreciate you both.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Modern People Leader. We really, really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to us. And connect with us on LinkedIn. We want to know what you think about the show, and you can find links to both of our profiles in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and see you on the next episode.